This session is being recorded. Welcome to the February Sandbox session for Tech Host Academy. I'm so excited to see all of you here. It will be recorded, and I'm going to leave it for the most part in gallery view. I will spotlight myself for this first part as we begin, but this recording will be shared in an unlisted YouTube. So all of those that are a part of this will have access to it for about 30 days. And then I will move it over to the archives at Tech Host Academy so that future generations or people that are part of Tech Host Academy have that as a resource as well. So welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I have a few things on my list that I would like to cover today. And then I definitely want to dive into what you're up to. But first, I'd like to launch a poll, just because I like to find different ways of asking who is in the room. So if you could take a moment here, what roles do you serve in most of your online sessions? And you can choose more than one, should be multiple choice. Are you a facilitator, a trainer instructor, a learner, a remote team member, a tech host, or something else? And if you're something else, please put that in the chat. Would love to know, as I know we come into this work so many different ways. Great. And let's see, we're almost there. All right, everyone has answered. So let me share the results to you so that you can see that. And it looks like we have a lot of trainers, instructors, remote team member. That's excellent, and tech hosts. So I love having experts in the field and would love to hear from all of you soon. What it is you're finding in the field that might be new since the last time we met or just recently, because we all learn from being an online course on online tech hosting. If you're anything like me, I learn something every single time. So I wanted to share with you a few things that were coming up for me last week. You may have seen this, and let me make it a little bit bigger. This was a screenshot that I took while I was tech hosting a weekend-long course in calligraphy, and I was noticing that I had a slightly different layout than usual. And so, of course, I've got my shared screen workspace, the whole Zoom screen window there. I've got the live transcript up, and I've got my notes in the background, sort of my script when I want to go to set the tone. I've got handouts and other things on my desktop. I'm really looking at the chat, and something that was important to me in this particular workshop, because it was fairly small and the folks all knew each other, they're pretty chummy, but I had a lot of people coming in and out of the session, right? Because it was a week long and not everybody could be there all the time. So I was always watching, that's why I have that participants list up, who is coming and going. And when somebody new would come in, I would welcome them. I would give them an update of where we were in the workshop, what supplies they needed on hand. And I was doing all of this privately. So highly recommend staying on top of that. If you are someone who tech hosts for classes and things like that, where people are coming in and out, just helping them along so they feel welcomed. And then along the bottom there, you'll see that maybe you can't see this, but I will also drop this in the chat so that you have a copy of it. And for those of you who are in Tech Host Academy, this is also part of the Padlet. So I have a whole Padlet full of resources that you can go and check out and download. And then so again, along the bottom, I've got a roster of the participants, helps me know who's there. And I take roll for multi-day things. I have my I have a URL up, a web browser up to do any research or add links to products or anything like that that the client is asking for. And I always have my email address up, or my email server up, so that if someone's trying to get in or having any trouble, then I have a way to just check on them. Because sometimes if you're anything like me, I get these last minute emails, even though the class has already started. So any questions about this layout? I know it looks a little busy with my crazy background as well. And feel free to unmute. You don't have to wait and type it in the chat. And maybe how does yours differ? Or do you have anything to add?
Are you working off a Mac, Heather?
Yes. Yeah. Are you on a Mac or a PC, Lisa?
No, a PC, but I always notice that Mac you've got a bit more versatility. You can do a few more things than you can on your laptop.
Is it how you can arrange the windows, or can you say more about that?
I think on a Mac, I know that you can, like you say, you can pull the screen in and out and like do what you do, which is harder, I think, on when you're just on a PC. You probably can do it, but I'm sure it's easier. I was on a call on Tuesday night, and she had a Mac, and she was having problems with showing her in the slides not in presenter mode, and I kept saying, but because she was on a Mac, it was hard for me to talk her through how to change it. Yeah, we just had to leave it. But you do have that flexibility where you can put it and then pull the screen out and make it into one, which I don't think you can do on a PC.
Yeah. Anyone else working on a PC have anything to add, tips or questions? Since we have Lisa in the room, who is, by the way, if you haven't already met Lisa, she is the Zoom guru. That's what she calls herself on LinkedIn.
I try anyway.
Oh, we've had several geek out sessions. Yeah. Great. And I have found as a tech host, because I work on Mac, I have to get a little bit good at PC too, that a lot of times Windows will go away. Like if they click on a link and then it takes them to a browser window on a PC, sometimes they lose that Zoom window. Sometimes that's just an issue of, one window being over the other, but sometimes it can minimize, and then you have to help them go back and find that as well.
Yeah. I've noticed when I've co-hosted, anyone who's got a Mac and has problems seems to have a lot more problems than if you're on a PC. And then it's harder for me to talk them through rectifying it because I don't have a Mac. So
yeah, this is where if it's a chummy enough group, I'll ask, does anyone in the room, are they working on a PC? Can they help? But if it's something where, you don't want to interrupt the flow of show, it would help to either be able to, one, Google very quickly, or spend some time with someone who's on a different platform. And this was a great opportunity that Lisa's here, that we can ask those kind of questions, whether you're Mac or PC. So if everyone can just type in the chat, what type of computer are you working on? And then we can get sort of a chat poll going so we can see. Yeah. Yep. All right. Annalisa's both Mac and PC. Okay. So we're pretty even here, and that's good. So I don't have a preference. I mean, I have a preference, of course, because I'm on a Mac, and have been for my entire life, but I've also worked with PCs as well. And I think it's just good to know. And it might be that if you are already a trainer facilitator and you work on one platform, it might be helpful to hire a tech host that works on a different platform, because there's a learning opportunity there. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, last week we talked about one of the things that Muddy recommended was letting people know how to view, or best view, or just give an option for viewing on screen. So I created this slide, and I'm also going to throw this in the chat so that you have a copy of it. It's just a little bit bigger here, but I'll go ahead and throw it in the chat so that you can see it, maybe open it up on your own computer. But here, I just did this last week after our other tech call. In the workshop, I let people know, if you go up to the upper right-hand corner and click View, you can choose side-by-side speaker. Now, for this instance, we were in a class, and it was very, very focused in on the hands. It was a calligraphy class. So I recommended to everyone, choose side-by-side speaker, and then slide that little piece in between to decide how big you want to see their hands and the speaker, because this particular instructor was doing a lot with her integrated cam where you could see her face, and she was doing a lot on her document cam, almost half and half. So it was really helpful to let people focus just on that. And then a couple of days later, I tech hosted for a class where it was really about the people in the room. So not only did you want to see the slide, it was pretty much just about talking points. It was more important to connect with other people in the space. So in order to see everyone, letting people know that if they choose that side-by-side gallery, that very first part of, to the right, instead of just seeing the speaker, you would see everyone. So that's some pretty basic thing. And again, it's something we covered last time when Muddy was in the room. But now, if you want to, you have a slide. You can either use this in a tech check session or before the session to just give everyone a reminder, or build your own. I just simply took a screenshot, threw it over to actually I took a screenshot and did the text on my computer. And then a few days later, I realized, ooh, I need one that says show everyone, but I didn't have a screenshot of that. So I just added it in on my iPad. I just hand wrote it in. So I'm curious, does anyone else use visual tools like this to help in their tech check sessions, or to help others get acquainted with the technology that they're using?
Yeah, I think so. Because some people don't really know how to. A lot of hosts just don't know how to navigate around Zoom. So
Yeah.
and they just get the slides up, and they don't even realize. Some of them don't realize you can put how you can view people. It's very common, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm speaking to, you are all really smarty people. So you're keen, you may know all of this, but it's also a great tool to teach others if they don't know. So thank you for that, Lisa, especially our hosts when they need a little bit of security. And I think when we share things like this, even though it's simple, it validates people's knowledge and it helps build trust with them that we are this trusted advisor. Now, I want to share kind of a funny story with you. I tech host a lot in the calligraphy world and in other learning situations. And I have, I would say, a handful of folks that, even though they've been online since the beginning of the pandemic, they somehow still come into the session completely baffled by something. So the last time I tech hosted, I had someone come in and her screen looked like this. She was literally sideways and she couldn't figure out why. Now, I'd love to hear from folks if someone comes in this way and private chats you and says, "What do I do?" What are some of the possible scenarios that this could be the case?
normally on an iPad when that happens.
Yeah, mobile
I've not
device.
seen it on a PC, but it's when they're on an iPad, and so it's just talking them through getting it up the right. Yeah, I think there is something they can press, but I can't off the top of my head think of it at the moment.
Yeah, and mobile devices, you can tell it, you can lock the orientation sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep. What else? What else could be a problem? Why would somebody dial in this way? Well, I was pretty stumped. I was like, what the heck?
I only know it as an iPad problem.
So I asked her, I said, "Are you on a mobile device?" My first thing was phone. Like, she was on a phone and for some reason it was the wrong orientation, but then it still didn't quite click with me. And she said, "No, I'm on a laptop." And I thought, what? So I told her to go to, and you can all follow along, to the little up arrow next to stop video, to your video settings. And when you get there, I'll show you what I did. I told her, so I was typing in there, "Go there." And then I took a screenshot of myself doing this. And I said, "Go to the upper right-hand corner and click the rotate tool." So all of us
Oh
can do
yeah.
it right now. And you'll see that it makes us go in all these different directions. And she did it. And she's like, "That's it." And I thought, how did you possibly mess this up before you
Yeah.
came onto the call? And so then it baffled me because she always comes in and has something. And I thought, is she messing with me? No, she can't be messing with me. I thought, is someone messing with her? So this is a really great April Fool's joke. If you wanted to go into someone's Zoom account and put them sideways, have them baffled for a little bit. Anyway, I just thought this was a really funny one. And the way that I responded is, I literally, while the class was going, I went into that video settings, and I pointed to it like I am here. I pointed to it and I took a picture. Then I circled the thing and I private messaged that in the chat, and it gave her a visual right away to know exactly what to do. And I thought, wow, that was odd. And again, love to hear stories from all of you if you've had anything like that that stumped you. Yeah. So let's find out what you want to learn today, now that I've hopefully warmed you up a little bit. And this comes from Muddy Schlegel, high bar, low bar. And I am going to, here's a couple of things. So let's go from the balcony for a moment. When I am tech hosting, I turn off annotation for others because it's a great way for Zoom bombers to come in and start drawing dirty pictures everywhere. So now I'm going to enable that. And I did so by going to the More button. And because I'm the host, it allowed me to enable annotation for others. So now you can go to either where you have all of your icons, you can click the annotate tool, or where it says you're seeing Heather's screen right next to it, it says view options, and you can go down to annotate. And when you click that annotate tool, you're going to get a little toolbar, and go ahead and click text and then type in your low bar and your high bar. Your low bar is going to be, what do we need or what do you need today in order to feel satisfied with the time that you've invested? You've all spent some time being here today. So what would you like to accomplish today? And then what's your high bar? What's like your burning question, or what would be the best possible outcome? And let me know if you're having trouble finding that annotation tool. Right. So I love when I see the word just, because it's like status quo. This is just what I need. Nice to see everyone. Tips and tricks, community, any tips, that's great. You're definitely going to get that. And I'd love to hear what other people are running into as well. Good. Now the not sure in terms of your high bar. Thanks for being honest, right? So what I'd love for you to do is, between now and the next time we meet, come up with something that will blow your mind. Like, I need to get this out of this session together. Yeah, so I just would love to have that. And then learning about apps. So if you said learning about apps, please either unmute or type in the chat. What apps are you interested in? Are you just apps in general? Maybe we explore, or is there a specific one you want to try out?
It was me, Myra.
Yeah.
No, not any in particular. I think there's just something about when they kind of appeared on Zoom, and I just go, oh, and I think actually there's something about it just actually felt really quite overwhelming, because there were so many, and I'm like, I don't know where to start, to be honest. So I think something just about going, which ones are good, like which ones are useful, which ones are worth kind of, I suppose there's something time to get a feel for how they work, and essentially which ones are worth it then, essentially.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to use any, kind of which ones are the ones worth investing to learn how to use them, and I think to use them effectively.
Yeah.
Because I deliver a lot of teaching, training, and group work online. And so to kind of enhance any teaching that I deliver or workshops that I deliver, I would love to use apps, but I think there's something about making sure I'm using them effectively and for the right reasons.
Great. Excellent. We'll put that on the agenda. I'm going to type this in the chat. And great. And then so I want some of you to be thinking about what apps you use, why you use them, because just like when apps first came out on the phone, it was like, there's an app for that. You can do anything, but what is worth investing in your time and your energy in learning? Great. And then idea to crack 2510 crowdsourcing. Whoever typed that, can you say more?
Me?
Yes.
So I've just come off a very interesting call with Elise Keith and Keith McCandless.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Nice.
running. You probably know that. Heather, certainly, I'm sure you know. They're running this experiment thing where they're designing an innovation session that they can test with a whole bunch of different organizations. And myself and a colleague have put in a proposed session, and the bit that we haven't yet figured out how to do online that would work really, really well is the liberating structure 2510 crowdsourcing. Now, the truth is that lots of people have been working on this for a long time and nobody's got the answer. But since you asked what would be my highest bar, then that would be it.
Yeah.
So Elise has put in a bunch of restrictions, most particularly that if we can possibly use the Zoom chat for it, that would be the best possible option. And the idea I'm currently playing with is using a tool called Streamalive, which I only encountered for the first time this week, but is really rather awesome and creates pretty visuals from the Zoom chat.
Okay.
So that's what I'm thinking about, and it would be great if I got that, but I don't in all seriousness expect it.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, because if any of you were like me, I had to type fast to figure out what is 2510 crowdsourcing. So I found it on the Liberating Structures site, and we're probably going to need a little bit more information, but it's probably good that you've come to a group, unless someone's got the answer, that we can put our heads together and maybe think about it in other ways too. So, okay, let's let that simmer a bit. Anyone else have a high bar or something that's come up for you in the field that you want to share, or questions that you want to ask, challenges you may have faced? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and capture this, clear it out, and stop sharing. And if you don't mind, we can start with the apps piece. I think that's something that we can all somehow relate to, and then we'll be thinking a little bit more about the 2510 crowdsourcing. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. That might be new information for some of us. So great. So I'd love to hear, what apps are people currently using, and in what context are you using it? Just a good brainstorming. Yeah.
I always use Mentimeter.
Okay. You know what? I'm
Well,
thinking we probably need a whiteboard for this, right? So we can maybe type some of this down. So let's do a little bit of crowdsourcing already. So I'm just going to use the simple whiteboard, mainly because I've experienced so many wonderful glitches from using the more advanced one. They just came out of beta, but that doesn't mean I'm good at doing that yet. So if you don't mind typing in, Lisa, what you said, and then if anybody else uses apps, please go ahead and type that. And remember, you can use your formatting tool to change size, color. Once you click away, you can go back to the select tool and move things around if you need to. Or tell me if you can. I know I can as a host. I don't know if you can do it to your own as a participant. I'm also happy to make everybody a co-host too, unless you decide you want to. In fact, I'll do that. While you're typing, I'll make you each a co-host. And if you want to go back as a participant just to see how things operate, that's great too. All right. Great. So Mentimeter, Asana, Wello, Miro, backgrounds. I use programs that also have apps, but don't use the Zoom app versions. Yes, I'm with you there. Team members are using Wello, but haven't yet. So can someone speak more to Wello?
Yeah, so Wello is it was previously a competitor to Zoom in a lot of ways. It was created by the people who created Sococo, if anyone remembers that, which was pre-pandemic, was an online office. The idea being that you would be online present in a in a sort of picture of an office, and your avatar would sit at a desk, and if people wanted to come and talk to you, they would knock on your desk, and then if you let them in, they would suddenly be in a video call with you.
Nice.
Welo is the same kind of thing. So the consultancy I work with, we have a space, and a bunch of people meet there every morning at 9 o'clock to talk about what they're doing during the day. I don't, but it's for groups, it can be really good because you've got, as the participant, you've got the ability to jump in, move yourself much more easily than with breakout rooms. It's obvious who's in the room, and you can put yourself in a particular chair, for example, in a circle, or you can go and sit out on the beach or the coffee area, whatever the thing is designed to look like. And yeah, the different areas give a sense of what you're intending to be there for. So if you've put yourself in the yoga zone, you're basically implying that you're chilling out and you don't really want to be talked at. On the other hand, if you've put yourself in the coffee area, you're implying anybody can come and talk to you. Now, I haven't yet, so Welo is a bit shaky when you've got other virtual cameras running on your machine. So if you're running Prezi or OBS or any of those kind of things on your machine, Welo doesn't always play nicely. So Welo can often go a bit funny when I try and use it, but it's a lovely piece of kit.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you so much. That was a great overview. For those of you who've used it, do you mind putting a little green check mark or some kind of a check mark next to it? Maybe we can ask some more questions. No? It's pretty new. I know that what are some other platforms that are like that? Have any of you used other ones? I know I have. I just can't remember the name of it, where in this case, it's like there's already a setup structure and you can walk around and see people's names. And when you get closer to them, you can hear them. And then you can just
like Remo or something, because I've been to quite a lot of networking events where it looks just like Welo, and you can move around to different areas or different tables, and so you can see who's in that room. So if you don't want to go in that room, because you can see, which is quite nice. But then yeah, there's a few of them out there, I think, but Remo is very similar, I think.
That's right,
Yeah.
Remo, and it's REMO, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's
the other set. The other set are the ones like spatial chat, where if you move near somebody on a sort of infinite board, you can hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have this roomy effect that both Welo and Remo have.
Got it. Yes. Yeah. And that is really interesting, especially for big conferences where they're going to also have a networking session, usually at the end of the day or something like that. It's a great way for people to come together, and it can be asynchronous, right? So they don't have to be on Zoom. They can log in later to the platform and get on that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or are they used in conjunction with Zoom?
Well, Welo is now a Zoom app.
Okay.
So presumably in that sense, it is part of a synchronous meeting. But Welo also exists as a standalone thing, and in which case you could definitely use it asynchronously.
Excellent. So for those of you that want to check it out, you can go to the little apps icon next to where it might say annotation and all of that. Go to apps and go to discover and type in Welo. And there you have it. You can check it out. It looks like they've got a little video that talks about it, an overview. And so when the apps first started out in Zoom, this would have been a little bit over a year ago, I believe, there was a lot of worry about using Miro and Mural. And I know that there was a time where there was a speculation that Zoom was mining the information from the people that were using it. Had anybody else heard that? Or is that still true? Has that been a fear of anyone else's?
No.
Using integrated apps. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Asana. Who typed that? And can you tell us a little bit more about it?
I did, because I've got quite a lot of clients that I deal with from a virtual assistants avenue, not sort of the Zoom co-hosting, and it's just, I integrate that so that we can work together quite well. So it's quite nice if you do jump on a Zoom call, you can just click, get the Asana up that you've been working on, and use it like that.
Great.
Then
So
you're both looking at it.
yeah.
I think with
So,
the apps, what's great about the apps is you just go click and you're into it. Whereas you can easily go into everything, the back end, but you've got to then share screen, have your thing open up. Whereas like the apps are great because it's click, but yeah, you just got to get used to it because it's doesn't kind of operate how you expect. But
yeah, as a tech host, we need to do a couple of things. We have to share the link in the chat. We have to make sure everybody migrates to it. We might have to tell people how to, that we're going to use the audio in Zoom, but we're going to use the image in, you're going to use your own browser for interacting with it. And then remind people that even though we're sharing the screen, because some people say, why can't I type in there? Well, they're clicking on the Zoom screen, not clicking on their own browser screen. So
yeah,
I love that you're, that these apps are, like you said, click. And here you go. It's right inside of Zoom. Good. All right. So Miro and Mural are very similar, though there are people that live in one camp or another, right? So I would love to, again, maybe see some check marks on maybe which one of these you use, if you use one or the other. Let me just move this aside quickly. Yeah.
I've not used them myself. I'm in the background helping my clients and I will advise them, like if I'm doing training, to use Miro or Mural or whatever, or Mentimeter to just make their sessions more interesting and interactive. So that's kind of where I've come from.
Excellent. So we have a few experts in the room, or at least those who have used it. So that's great. Any questions from those who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, come back to that app things. I was one of the ones mentioned that using things, but not necessarily the Zoom apps, because like doing a number of hybrid meetings, and the idea being that kind of wanting everyone to have the same access to, and so everyone was supposed to bring a device and then use it to access like the Miro board, that kind of approach, which I thought was an interesting thing to think about, because otherwise all of a sudden you shift and some people have better access because they weren't watching the Zoom meeting.
Right.
But then also, so they kind of or you kind of forced everyone same. So that was kind of where I found most of these places that I've used that have been these kind of hybrid meeting situations.
Good. And are people using Mural and Miro inside of Zoom, like with the apps, or are you going outside of Zoom and adding, just putting the link in the chat? Curious about that.
My experience is that people don't use the app. They get it up as a share screen and have it running through a web browser. People have, I would say 90% of people or clients that I speak to do not get or understand apps at all. They know they're now showing down the sidebar. You can see them, which is new, but most people have not experienced or don't even want to touch it.
Yeah. It's a little scary. So I'm putting a Mural quick guide in the chat now. You're welcome to download that and use that if you want. It's something that I send out to folks if I know that there might be some people that aren't so tech savvy, if they haven't used Mural before. And if I have a tech check session, I will send this out beforehand, and then we can dive in a little bit to Mural. But what are some key things for those of you who do use Mural? What are some key pointers that you might share when getting people acquainted with it, that may not be, or maybe you have a mixed group of people and you're not sure if it's going to go smoothly? And the reason why I ask that is because I don't know about you, but how many people at the beginning of the pandemic got so frustrated with mural that they were like, I hate it. I'm never going to go in it again. And it's usually because there wasn't someone there to help kind of hold their hands to transition.
I think like most of my experience with it has been very basic. So then I've kind of directed people to jam boards, because most people just want the post-it note option. People don't want to go in. Obviously you can do some amazing things with it, but at the end of the day, people just want basic, let's slap up some post-it notes. That's kind of as far as I've gone. I have been on calls where people have really used it, but they've been really confident in it, and so I've just sat back and watched, so I've not had to get involved.
It can be really interesting when it's used as a visual agenda, right? Like they're going to go through the whole agenda piece. You've got the outline on one side and people can go in. A few key things that I like to do as a tech host is tell them what to do before they go in there, so that when they get in there, they can do those 3 things. And I type those in the chat. And the 3 main things is just log in as a visitor. Don't try to download Mural. Don't try to join it. You don't have to say who you are. Just go as a visitor, and that helps things stay anonymous. Then the first thing I have them do is go down to the bottom of their screen and turn off all cursors. Because if you're like me, all those cursors happen. It looks like a bunch of bees buzzing around, and it can be really overwhelming. And then the next thing I have them do is go to the left side and either grab a sticky note and start typing so that they feel success right away, or go over and look at a picture and search for a picture and drag it onto the screen. And that can be a really great way just to have an icebreaker, and they learn a quick skill, and then they don't give up too soon. And as the tech host, I'm looking at how many participants are in the room and then how many people have navigated over to the mural. So if I have 10 people in the room and only 4 are over there, I know I need to stop and restate my instructions. So transitioning to people, whether it's into a third-party collaboration tool like that, or even into breakouts, that's when people start dropping off if things get a little too hard. Good. Okay. So we talked about Mural, Asana, Wello. Okay, Mentimeter. Who is using Mentimeter?
Me.
And who has
It's
questions?
my favorite.
Yeah, and who has questions about Mentimeter? Because there's so many things you can do with it, right?
Yeah, I really like it. I push it towards my clients who are wanting to make instead of just using the polls and,
So
and I like the way you can integrate your slide deck, your PowerPoint slide deck into it. So then if you are using lots of Mentimeter slides, because you've got lots of sort of polls and things going on, then you're not having to flip it in and out. So you just get into Mentimeter and then your slides are there. Quite like that.
And it can keep people really engaged, right? So for those of you who were in Tech Host Academy, when Carolyn Ellis gave her presentation, it was completely in Mentimeter. So it kind of looked like PowerPoint, like it was a presentation, but there was something about it. And then she would ask a poll, and so we could be interactive with it. So that's wonderful. Any other tips from experts or those using Mentimeter? Something that they like to do that isn't just the poll?
I really like the cloud thing where everyone puts
like a word cloud,
a word in and it comes up really, like, I really like that. But you can get really, like, if you pay for the paid version, there's so much you can choose from, and it's really visual, I just think. So to me, it really breaks up a session that if
Yeah, and you can brand it your own colors, and you can animate a lot of different of the visual results and things like that. Excellent. So backgrounds, let's talk a little bit about backgrounds. Who typed that, and tell me about backgrounds? Is that an app, or are we talking backgrounds in the video settings?
That was me, because in Zoom apps, if you go into the backgrounds in Zoom apps, there are hundreds, literally thousands of different backgrounds. You just type in whatever you can think of, type it in, and loads of backgrounds will come up. You can type in baby and you'll get loads of backgrounds. It's brilliant. Like anything you can think of, you type it into the Zoom backgrounds and a picture or 10 pictures will come up of that subject.
That's fantastic.
I don't like backgrounds personally, but it is brilliant if you go in and have a
Well, Lisa, you have a beautiful background already, right? And so if you notice, I have a bunch of stickies on my background. It was because I was working on a graphic recording and I needed to scan all of these and I didn't want to stack them because they were sticky on top of each other. So I just stuck them on my wall and they're going to come down later on today. But for me to have this really bright background, for those of you who have seen it before, that take it off this side, you've seen it. It's very colorful and bricks. I tell folks, first of all, people see it and then they remember me. My biggest question is that a real background? No, it's just a photograph. It's on canvas. And for those of you who haven't seen this, it's literally taped with artist tape to my wall. So you can see the artist tape at the top there. So it's very lightweight. But what I remind people, especially after they've asked something like that, I tell them the reason why I have this really colorful background, because as a tech host, you can easily find me in the gallery. So if you have any issues, you know, a lot of people, when they're having technical issues, they have sort of a panic attack or, you know, mini panic attack, or anxiety gets a little bit higher. And so they start to forget things. But if I tell them, just remember the background, it's like they can go right to it. So backgrounds can be very helpful. What are some of the cons about having virtual backgrounds? Does anyone know? Yeah. Okay. What was that, Annalise? It looked like you were dancing.
You disappear in and out, or all of a sudden, like I know I was in a meeting the other day and their little kid shows up, but then part of their body's gone because it's like trying to figure out which body do I like include. She had a child's head only.
That's exactly why I don't like them, when you start not seeing bits of people.
Judy, what do you have there? She has a stick figure. Yeah, you're muted.
Sticky note, if you need to show pictures and whatnot to the camera and you've got a virtual background that, well, I haven't got a virtual background, but if you wanted to show visual messages, they all go peculiar.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is using a virtual background and she accidentally had green screen checked or something like that. And her teeth are so white that the virtual background was showing up on her teeth.
Oh, no.
But there's a couple of other things. It also takes away from bandwidth. So if someone's having a bandwidth issue, it's taking a little bit extra because you're making Zoom work a little bit harder. And the other thing is it actually creates Zoom fatigue. So not a big deal if you're a tech host or someone else that's just a participant, but if you're a presenter and you're using a blurred background or a virtual background, the eye is actually, it's actually like moving, it's like staticky and it's video like, and it's actually creating too much information for the people viewing you, and it can create Zoom fatigue. So just notice the next time you are in a meeting, a session, or a conference where the speaker has that virtual background going on, just notice after about a half an hour of if you're watching them, not, you know, if you're multitasking, probably not going to happen, but if you're really paying attention to them, you're going to start to have eye strain. Yeah. But they can certainly be fun, and they make for a great icebreaker, right? So everybody, you know, quick learning moment. Let's learn how to use virtual backgrounds. Everybody type in a virtual background and have fun. Same goes for under your stop video. If you go to video settings, sometimes it's fun to go to background and effects and then play with the different video filters, whether you're adding funny little frames or you're adding hats to whatever you're wearing, or even there's even makeup and avatars, right? So you can be totally cool when you're doing this. And it's just a fun way to, yeah, I love it. Everybody's trying, some people are trying it out. It's just a fun way to kind of break the ice or learn something new. And just be careful if you're doing virtual makeup that you test it out first. Because I have a friend who, when she talks, her eyebrows don't match up with her face. And sometimes your lipstick might move around. So yeah, let's be careful about that too.
I was gonna say,
I always think with,
oh, sorry.
no, go on.
I was gonna say, like I had been doing a meeting once that was a property management one, and we had like, the idea was everyone was supposed to start it bringing in like, and as their background put the picture of like one of their property horror stories, like that they'd had And then it was like everyone got a chance to share, like, why was this on your list of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we opened the door to that location, like, and what all you had to do. But it was a kind of cool way to get everyone to share something that was, but those were not pretty pictures to keep up later. They just went back to the regular background afterwards.
Right. But what a great group shot too, right? Fail. Here's how we learned from that. Good. And you had something, Lisa?
Yeah, I was just saying that sometimes I know like some people have very plain backgrounds, but I think having your own background or your home, I think you can, depending on the call, if it's quite a small group, you can really get a feel for somebody and who they are. Whereas if there's a background that is a fake one, you're just looking at that person all the time thinking, who are you? What, and whereas I think if you can see their home kind of thing, or there's a picture in the background, and sometimes it's a good talking point when people are dropping into the call, it's a really good sort of way to sort of get to know everyone, have a chitty chat and sort of like, oh, what's that? Oh, I like being able to see people's backgrounds, the real them, as long as there's no pants and socks and that kind of stuff hanging up,
Well, that can be
as per
interesting
usual.
too, right? It's
Yeah.
an extension of their personality, and it also builds trust.
Yeah.
So people may trust you more if they can see a little bit more of who you are. Yeah. Great. And then I threw in the timer. That's something that I use a lot. Before that, I had Minicam, and I would use YouTube timers, which are great. YouTube timers are beautiful. They kind of take up the whole screen. So if I wanted to start a timer like I did here, and I can certainly stop it at any time, but if I wanted to start it or pause it, you can go to timer in the apps. It's a really easy one. The pro is that here I am, I can have a timer on. Great for breaks, that kind of thing. But if I turn off my screen, let's see if this works now, because I tried this the other day and it didn't work. When I turn off my screen, my timer goes away. So if I want to do this during a break, I have to keep my screen on and walk away, or they see me working or something like that. So yeah, so there's that timer piece. And that one's pretty self-explanatory. It has, the interface has changed a little bit. So that is a little bit different. So I'm curious, Myra, has this been helpful? Do you have other questions? What could you apply right away?
Oh, really helpful. Thank you so much. Yes. Well, I suppose what I'm thinking about is, how can I then apply them, and how can I work with them, and what's going to be useful? I think definitely with Mentimeter, I'm really, that's the one I think that I've walked away going, I'm really curious to see what it can do. I think, Lisa, in you saying that, because it can blend, in my head, it's like a blend of PowerPoint, but also all the other interactive polls and activities. I think that having it all in one place, I think, sounds really helpful, but also really effective, that you're not switching between. So I think that's definitely one that I'm going to go, definitely going to invest in learning more about that. But even, to be honest, all the rest of them all sound really useful as well. So that's been really good. Thank you. My question about Mentimeter then is, if it can do kind of PowerPoint slides, are you creating them all in Mentimeter, or do you create them? Can you import them from PowerPoint, or do you drop them in?
So you can create them in PowerPoint and then drop them in, and then just move them around.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah,
great. Thank you. Yeah, well, that's all been really, really helpful. Thank you, everybody.
The other thing with Mentimeter is when you've got people who are losing concentration and going on their phones, the fact that you're making them go on their phones breaks that up, because you know what people are like, especially younger people, they just can't keep off their phones. And I always think it's a good way to, if you notice people are getting a bit bored, it's right, I want you to go on your phones and just type in this, and it breaks that up, I think.
And is it a similar thing then to how we're talking about Miro Mural, which is you put a link to Mentimeter in the chat, or are you using it as an app in Zoom?
No, you can have it up on Zoom, like as in like your slides, but then people can either click on a link or go on their phones and type it in, or I think they even does a QR code now. So
great.
But I'd have a play with it and get feel for it. There's a free version, so set that up and have a play with it. But just give us a shout if you want some help.
Oh, great. Thank you, Lisa.
No worries.
Excellent. Wonderful. Any other questions, ideas? All right. Well, I'm ready to dig in and learn a little bit more about crowdsourcing 2510. So, Judy, you gave us some context about how you're looking for it to be used. I don't know if we have any other experts in the room about crowdsourcing 2510, but can you just sort of recap and what we might be able to, given what you've already experienced and learned, how do you think you can maybe harvest some information from this group?
Well, let me try and narrow down the challenge if I can.
Yeah, and I
So
will stop sharing. Yeah.
A group of people on Zoom, typically a group of, let's say, between 30 and 50 people, have between them generated a bunch of ideas. So if we were doing this in the room, they would then write one idea on an index card. And what would then happen would be you pass the index cards around, somebody blows a whistle or rings a bell, you turn the card over and you put a rating on the back of it. Whoever's holding the card puts a rating on the back of it, the idea that's on the front, between 1 and 5. And at the end, so then you switch it around again, rate again, switch it around again, rate again. At the end, you've done 5 rounds, so the maximum score that any one idea could have is 25. And so you call out to the group, who's holding a card where the numbers on the back add up 25? So that's the in the room version. Of course, online, we can't write things on index cards. We can't hand index cards between us. And it's quite challenging even to anonymize a lot of ideas in short order, make sure that everybody only submits one idea, and then get people to rate them, rate each idea with a score. That's basically the problem, is you need everybody to submit one idea, and then anonymously people to rate them, and then quite quickly say which are the top ones. Okay. Now, people have done this with a bunch of different tools. A Google Sheet, you can sort of do it, but people
Like
get scared because it Jamboard, you can't easily put the scores on, particularly if the group's bigger. You end up so people are adding sticky notes with numbers on them, but then they get confused and they get lost, and it's quite hard to add them up. So I was starting to wonder about using ratings in tools like Mentimeter, but then Elise said, who's setting the challenge for this thing, but what would be really good is, instead of using a separate tool, can we use the chat to do this? So that's a whole other level. Can we do this just as well, but it's in the chat? So I started thinking about this tool called Streamalive.
I was wondering who was bringing that Streamalive into the room. That was great.
Let me show you how Streamalive works, because I think this is going to be interesting, even if you can't solve my problem. Yeah. Let's see if I can get this going. Here we go. Share. I hope you're now seeing a screen called Wonder Words. How are you feeling now? If you were to write in the chat 1 or 2 words about how you're feeling now, if this is working as it should be, they should magically appear on the screen.
And I've seen this and it works different ways. Sometimes it pops up like a little speech bubble. This looks like it's creating a word cloud.
Cloud, isn't it?
Yeah, so this creates a word cloud from the chat in real time.
I've seen it where they have it in a map and people can type in where they're dialing in from, and it'll put a dot on the map. just from the chat. So that makes things very interactive. Yeah.
Which of these letters appeals to you most? A, B, C, D, or E, F, or G? And you can put either the number relating to that letter or the letter itself, and it should magically, and you can, I think on this one, you can vote as many times as you like in the chat.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's visualizing what we're putting in the chat, which is great. So I want to get a clarification. So we can come back to Stream Alive for a second, but I want to get a clarification for your for what you're wanting to do with this. Are you wanting to create an engaging environment? Because I now remember the time we did the 25-10, we were all running around, like it was a physical run around the room and grab the thing and then write on it and then keep going. Is it like that, like you're trying to generate excitement, or are you wanting to distill down and come to consensus in another way? Are you trying to
distill down, not
Okay.
necessarily consensus, but
Right.
to come to a
Prioritize
greater
or-
level of convergence and prioritization?
Okay. Have you heard of path space?
Path space? No, I haven't.
Okay, so path space is a really fast way to get a bunch of ideas out and then prioritize immediately. So let's gosh, okay, I know that we've done this before, so I'm going to look at Annalise and Mary. Don't freak out. But do you remember we did Path Space with the man who started Path Space and he took us through it? Brian also took us through it. And they both had really great examples for us. We'd have to be starting from scratch here, but I'm just going to share my screen so that you can all see it and then we can try it. But I have to be honest, I have not put this into use a lot. And so I
Is it
have
an external app?
It is. So it's pathspace.com. And let me see if I can invite all of you. Yes, I can. So I'm going to put this in here so that you can at least have it up. And we can come up with whatever question we want. We have here, how might we delight customers? But what might be a good question, Judy? And we can just play with this.
This will do. The problem is that I've now been told I can't use an external app. It has to live within Zoom.
Oh, so it has to be an app within Zoom. Okay, so let me
not
see.
an app within Zoom. I have to somehow find a way of using the Zoom chat to do it, or something similarly accessible.
Oh, okay. Well, then this may not work then, because if you have to stay within Zoom, yeah. But this is a wonderful, there's literally 5 steps here. So we generate the ideas, and I think there is a way where you can tell people only to choose one. I'm not sure. I know that when we build and view on everybody's ideas, this is like a clustering exercise, categorizing by themes together. That's definitely clustering. I think the build and view on everyone's ideas is that you then go a little bit deeper and deeper into the say more about your idea that you said, and then you can start to really put in some details. Then there's clustering, that's step 3. Then you vote on ideas anonymously, and you can tell people how many votes they have. So that might get things going. And then you view the voting results. So it's a way to distill all the ideas into okay, now we're going to take next steps. And when you go on to those vote ideas anonymously, this is a great opportunity to come to a criteria, what criteria are we going to use to vote for that kind of thing, and then distill that down. So again, great tool. It's not going to meet your needs. I forgot the requirement that it had to be within Zoom. Yeah. So Stream Alive sounds really great. Does anybody have any questions about Stream Alive? Because it can do lots of things, right? There's a lot of different apps within Stream Alive, I believe.
Yeah, I think there are at least 4 or 5 different kinds of questions that you can ask and magic things it does. But I haven't yet really played with its possibilities.
Yeah.
The reality, though, is I think that it's not going to be possible unless somebody's got a brilliant way of how can we rate a pile of ideas in a really accessible way. I think like PathSpace and a couple of the other retrospective tools with dot voting, I think is probably where we're going to end up.
Yeah, because that's what it kept making me think of, is like more that agile, like Scrum world, like just, yeah, that kind of, but I was trying to think of.
And you can use Mural as an app to vote and have timing and prioritize, but you're saying that won't work because you really need to use the chat? Yeah.
That's what's the latest constraint introduced today.
Nice. That's fascinating.
Because
Wow.
of course, Mural and Miro are always a bit challenging with bandwidth.
Yes. So you're wanting to make this really, really accessible. And I can respect
Yeah.
that. That's great, especially with working with large groups and you don't know their level of tech savviness, like everyone's going to be at a different level. But this is a really great project for us to wrap our heads around for those of you who are interested, because you may need to do it in the future or might want to do something like this. So I would love to I'd love to give you that as a bit of an assignment to think about, and then maybe come back together. We can, this recording will be on YouTube, so we can put things in the comments. I'm also going to take this to Brian and Muddy because I know I'm going to see Brian this next week. And then we can also put it out to Muddy too, to see if he has some ideas, because he might. Yeah.
Can I don't know whether it won't actually meet because we're not anonymizing the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just wondering if we could do something using the emojis in Zoom chat now in the new version.
Yeah, let's try that. And why can't we anonymize it if we changed our names?
So we change our screen names.
Yeah, to anonymous. So if we all decide that our screen names are anonymous, as long as we all spell it the same way.
What about anon?
Anon.
Yeah.
What do we want to call it? No, I don't think we want to be anon.
And then if everybody puts something in the chat.
Okay, so let's go ahead and. So to change your name, of course, you put your cursor on here. I'm just going to say this for the record. So the way I tell people to change your name, find your video, put your cursor on your nose, and in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see 3 dots. Go down to rename and rename to Anon. Yeah. And so, oh, this doesn't work because it shows our pictures.
Oh, yeah.
It used to work in the older version. So I wonder, can we turn off that?
Yeah. Couldn't you, or could you all have, if you were doing that kind of meeting, everyone would put the same kind of picture or something.
We can
like
edit
mine
our
just showed up as
profile
an
picture.
because I don't have a picture.
Right. So, right. But it still shows, but you're on a lease, right?
Yeah.
Not
So I'm
because
wondering, is it doing the A because the on a lease, or is it doing it because the non?
I don't know. I just went to edit my picture and it doesn't just let me remove it. I can either change it. Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah. See, when I switched to B and on,
it turned to B.
Turned it to B. So it is because of the non.
So we would have to turn off our profile pics. So how do we do that?
My profile went away when I added just the A.
Yeah, that may be, I wonder why. Who knows how to turn off our profile pics for those that didn't happen to? I love it when we go down rabbit holes. I actually do. I think it's fun. It's like, okay, we've gone off track, but hey, we kind of have to, this is another thing to remember.
Oh, that's because I didn't have a pic on.
Okay. So you just didn't have one at all?
Yeah, I did. Evidently I've changed my profile pic. I don't remember doing that, but yeah. I'm just showing up as empty.
But so I'm curious. So it doesn't sound like anybody knows how to turn off the profile picture.
You'd have to go into settings, profile, click on edit your picture, delete, which only takes a couple of seconds, but I can imagine that would confuse
the heck out of people.
Yeah. So it worked. Absolutely. What you just said worked. But you have to go into your Zoom settings I went into the browser because I even tried to do it from my app and it wouldn't let me do it.
You can't do it from the app. And once you click on, it then takes you into the browser. So
yeah. So you got to go into the browser, log into your account, go to profile, go to picture and delete. And it's, you have to click the picture and then go to delete. Okay, so we could do that. So that's one way to anonymize. And that's something you can give people pre-work. right? You can say before logging on, do these 3 things, you know,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And
It
so
might even be that you just have them, like if it's a group that's constantly doing that, like maybe if they do that, like they use a different user even, like you don't, you know, that way you keep your one user for this group that's doing that. That way they're not having to constantly, but
right.
just think it was a group that uses.
Okay, so let's start. So we're here. Now that we're here, some of us have pictures, some of us don't. Let's pretend like the pictures aren't there and we've all been anonymous and we're all A's. What do we do next, Judy?
Well, I was wondering if we could react using emojis
Right.
to the ideas people have put in there. I don't really know how to. I don't think there are any numbers in the emojis, are there?
Let's see. So
There should be, because it's every single emoji. Yeah, there are right at the bottom.
Yeah, there are.
So yeah, I put can you see I've put 7 up?
so where did you
Oh,
put
got
7?
them, yeah.
Ah, there you go. What's a
You'd have to
fast
get.
way to do that? Go under symbols. Yeah, it's under, actually, where is it? There's a couple of different numbers. You've got that number. But when I just type in the number, it doesn't show up in the search bar. Does that work for other people, or are you scrolling?
No, it doesn't, does it? Oh, it does if you type 7 as in the word.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
There you go.
Well, that's not too bad. Yeah. So type in the number and then it'll put it in there for you. Okay. Does that help, Judy? Are we getting closer?
I think it might we might be able to make it work. I think it needs some refinement, but that's really useful. Thank you.
And if you type it into the chat and you're using Stream Alive, because now the thing is who's going to do the math? Right? So who's going to sit there and tally everybody up, especially if it's a big chat storm?
Yeah.
And
So,
there's no way to require you can only do it once. So one of your parameters is you can only vote once. So it's have to be on the honor system.
Yeah.
Unless
but I
there's
wonder if we could get the guys at Stream Alive to make it possible to add it up quickly.
Add it up
into
quickly.
A poll.
Yeah, and ask them, can you make it so it only, well, even if you were to say it's got to be only one answer per person, if it can't distinguish between the anonymous, it can't do it unless it really knows each user, you know, is a different user. So are you working with developers at Stream Alive, or is this just an idea you might throw at them?
It's an idea, and I think they're early enough in their process that it might just be possible to talk to them.
Yeah. Yep. Good. So what other ideas come up for you after hearing how we kind of worked through this? Like, do you have some things that you want to be able to do in an online meeting that you haven't thought about, or that you hadn't been able to do, I should say? I loved having all of those parameters. It was almost like, here's the requirements, right? And we aren't quite there yet. But so let's also talk about the Liberating Structures 2510 activity. And with all of those parameters, what other uses could be available, right? So this will help Judy make the business case to Stream Alive. Okay, we want to be able to do this. And if they say that's just one use case, are there other use cases for those particular features? Being able to do that through chat. We can definitely list the benefits. This is designing for the margins and making this equitable for everybody, whether they have different bandwidth, different tech savviness, different accessibility things. But it almost needs another use case. Yeah.
like I was thinking earlier, that idea of more with like a scrum team and if they're really doing estimating, like, I mean, some groups do it and you know what everyone's saying, but you also have, in the ideal old scrum, like everyone was together to do their stand, like
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the case for most tech companies, like,
Yeah.
and so you're going to have people with different bandwidth, different things like that. It could be, so, and I do have found in trying to do that sometimes with different teams, like, well, everyone's supposed to be able to share their own vote. Sometimes people get nervous about if they think this is a level 5 and someone else thinks it's a level 2, like,
So anonymous is important, right?
Yeah, it can be in a different group, especially if someone's coming in, to that team and they're not sure. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's at
and I
least
think we
one.
make the assumption that if it's a scrum team, they're pretty tech savvy. They have all these tools to do this. But if we want a scrum team to be able to work with the product owner or someone outside of the team that's not as tech savvy, or like you said, we want to be able to do this anonymously. So I don't know if that helps you, Judy, by having a couple of other use cases, and the benefits of it might help sell the idea to Stream Alive. Yeah, because a developer is going to do the same thing. They're gonna say, okay, it's sort of like when I went to Guido Neuland and I had an idea for the big one art marker, and he was like, Heather, if I made a nib for every single person that wanted me to make a nib for a marker, we'd have 1,000 different nibs, and I would only sell 5 of each. And I was like, I'm telling you, this is gonna go over big. And it has. I mean, it took off, and it's the biggest art marker in the world. So it's doing well. But that was like 8 years ago. I said, can you do this? And I wasn't convincing enough, obviously. But as someone that's developing something, especially software developers, they're going to want to know what's the priority on this, right? And so if you need us, Judy, to put in a ticket to Stream Alive, a request ticket, tell us what words to say, where to go, and we'll just click that link and go over there and make a request.
Thank you. That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Need to get my act together first.
Yeah. Well, yeah. To decide, think it through and see if it's going to meet your need, because hate to get them to do that and then just go, oh, at the last minute, we decided not to use that new tool you developed. Yeah. But it might be a great thing that, if they need some testers or something, they're certainly welcome to come into this space too. So.
Thank you.
Good. Well, that was really fun to explore that. Sometimes you never know what you're going to get in the sandbox. So what I would love to hear from those in the field, what else have you been noticing, coming across? There's been a lot of new updates in Zoom. How has those changed the way you're tech hosting? Either messed you up or enabled you?
They've still not sorted out the chat, which is a bit annoying.
Are you talking about how many new options there are and how you can reply to someone's, or?
No, it's still, if you go into a breakout room and come back out, all the chat's gone.
Yeah.
They've still not rectified that. It was meant to be 3 weeks, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, I like to remind participants that's going to happen so that they don't freak out. To take pictures of the chat before they come back into the space if they need to. I assure them that the whole chat will be there at the very end if they save it. I'm doing that, and in doing that, it does 2 things. Again, it helps them feel more at ease going into it. They're informed, and I then become the trusted person. As a tech host, we shouldn't be talking that much, except for when we are enabling people through the technology. So right before they go to a break is a great time to, again, repeat the instructions before they get in, how much time they're going to have once we're in there, and that I'll be broadcasting some messages. Oh, and by the way, you're going to lose the chat. So please remember these 5 things as you go in. So yeah, very good. Yeah, that goes back to presence. So for those of you who are not in the Tech Host Academy, we have 2 chapters on presence of how do we show up, whether we're showing up for the presenter, the meeting organizer, the client, and then how are we showing up for the participants and helping them, enable them on their process. And so such an important thing, isn't it? I know that I was a tech host for a group a few weeks ago, and someone actually asked the meeting person, do we need a tech host? And it was a really great question, because I thought, oh, is this like a personality conflict? Did she not understand? And I think it's because it was such a it was a meditation group, and they felt like, someone was really watching them and making sure, like I felt like I was just sitting back and relaxing and participating with them, but they were like, it was kind of weird the way she told us, if, I kind of set the tone in the beginning, and they were like, that was weird. I'd never seen that before. And they were fine with me. But then the meeting organizer came back and said, yes, because this is a year-long process, we're going to have people that come in with music. We're going to have people that come in and need to do special things. The very first session, we had singing bowls. So if you've ever heard that sound, it's not an easy sound to replicate in Zoom. In fact, if people have their settings so that they, you're not going to hear high-pitched sounds or those kind of things, you can't do it. And there was a series of tech check sessions that we had to do in order to make it work. And we ended up going with a recording. So the recording worked. I pulled Muddy in on the subject. I think I even posted something in the Padlet, but she would do her singing bowls in the tech check session. And I'm sitting there switching things on and off, original sound for musicians off, thinking that would work. Nothing was working. And finally, I just said, can you record that just on your phone, just as a test, and email it to me? And she did it right then and there. And then I played it and we could hear it. And I said, now let's make sure you've got really good recording equipment. So she went into a studio, record her song, and then we played it in the session and it worked. But it's things like that we as techos have to figure out for each other. And in Judy's case, we get to actually have an opportunity to maybe help developers create the technology that we need to support what it is we want. So I'm wondering if that's inspiring anybody. And I'm going to kind of look to you, Myra, because I know you came in too with some definite, I want to be able to try some new things. Does that inspire new ways of working in online sessions?
Yeah, for me, definitely. I think there's something about, there is something, I think what I'm really getting from today and what I'm taking away with me today is this real sense of, there is Zoom as a window. And there's something then about, that's your canvas to add more to it and to use it as a, what I'm trying to say, something about it's complementary to other ways of using it. So there's something about literally not being defined by its four walls of a Zoom window. And I think there's something about, it's a blank canvas. And so what other tools can you bring to it? What paints, what brushes, and what are the textures do you want to bring to it? And so there's something about, it's now becoming much more multi-layered for me to kind of literally think outside the box with it. So that's been really quite helpful to think about it in that way, rather than feeling constricted by what can I do purely based on the fact that I'm on a screen and it's kind of a 2D flat surface.
Excellent. And I just want to remind you that you don't have to know all of the apps and what they can do. It's really about defining what that purpose that you're trying to get out of that, and then go and find an app that's going to do that, or know the limitations, right? And maybe that's going to push you to try things in a different way. Yeah, because and I'm sorry, Mary, I always call this out. In one of the very first meetings, you said, where do we go to find all the technology information? I was like, we can't boil the ocean. It's like, what do you want? And I think it's really important that we get very focused on what a group needs. And if we're lucky enough to be with a client over and over and over again, that we can help them incrementally improve their experience, we can bring it back to a group like this and say, here's what's going on for me. How can we look at this in a different way? Because we're not alone. I mean, we are alone. We're probably the only tech host, unless you're working on it with a group, but we're not alone in this. We can have each other to bounce these ideas off and come together too. So.
I love that exercise, just doing that exercise, trying to think through the solution, as you mentioned, with those different limitations, because it just made me even think about recently having a number of friends that are doing their continuing education stuff, or their medical profession, like different types. And yet some of them, depending on the company they were or whatever it is, like the constraints they have, that they're having to participate in these things, but maybe they're not just getting to sit in a convenient where they can jump into Mentimeter or Miraboard. Like they're actually like doing this thing over here and prepping for that next session. And just all they can have access to is the chat. And yet realizing, even when they were telling me about these issues that they were running into, and like, man, we so need it. Like, I wish they would have had a tech host. I realized, like, going through this exercise, how much my brain was still picturing solving them in ways that actually wouldn't work for those users, because I wasn't realizing how they interacted with the continuing education courses. So that's kind of cool to realize that. So
Yeah, it was sort of like our hybrid sessions where we had to think of all the things and we had scenarios and what were our limitations and how many people were in the room. That's the way we kind of have to turn that on every once in a while.
Heather, I'm really, really sorry. I've got a teenager that's stranded somewhere that I've got to jump in the
luck.
car and
Well,
grab
thank
her.
you for
Sorry.
thank you for joining
Do
us today,
apologise.
Lisa. I really
No, it's
appreciate
been a fantastic session. So I'll see you guys soon.
Good. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. And if people need to drop off, that's fine. And we're coming to the close pretty soon anyway, but I wanted to share this quick learn, do, think. And I am putting it in the chat should you want to use it as a slide or anything in your deliverables. But I'd love for you to take a moment and reflect on what you learned today, what your key takeaways are, and what's one thing you learned that you can put to use right away. Was there a tip or a trick that you're like, I'm going to use that tomorrow? Love for you to take a moment to reflect and either unmute or type it in the chat. Oops, and I meant to share a PowerPoint slide, not the PDF. I put the PDF in the chat. So great to hear. Yeah. Judy, I'm not quite sure how you would compute an emoji. Like, do emojis have different rankings? And having those numbers will certainly help with that process too. So glad to hear that you're interested in learning about apps. Yeah, thinking outside of the box to distill the problem. Yeah. Yeah, might be thinking in boxes. Yeah. Great. And then doing, what will you do differently as a result from what you learned today? Is it a new way of thinking? It sounds like we've already had a couple of those in the chat. Is it something you relearned? Like, oh yeah, I forgot I knew that. Could have been something simple. Or is there something you're going to have to unlearn in order to move forward and to do things differently? And hopefully this question will help it will resonate throughout your day or your evening and thinking, how can I think about these things differently? Yeah. So I'm Judy, you know me, I'm always going to advocate for visual. You know, it's so powerful, gets people together, helps them see things, it puts them on the same page. Yeah. Yeah, and instructions are key. I always make the assumption that everybody's smarter than me, so I don't need to give them instructions. But you wouldn't believe how many times somebody their audio could blip out, or they weren't really paying attention, and they're embarrassed to ask. What does Brian call it? He says people go into breakout rooms and then they get breakout amnesia. So you kind of have to remind them a couple of different times what they're going to do when they're in there. So great. Yeah, good. We're going to do things differently. And then what are you grateful for? What are you thankful for this time? I'm hoping that you can value this time that you invested. I know it was an hour and a half of your day, but what are you grateful for? I always like to put a nice bow at the very end. Great. I love that. Asking clients more about how they usually get feedback. Yeah. And helping you realize you have assumptions. I make a lot of assumptions. I've corrected all day long with the assumptions that I have. Good. Wonderful. Yeah, well, feel free to use the tools that I put in the chat. I like to remind people you can save the chat by clicking the 3 little dots at the bottom. I know you all know that, but sometimes it's nice to hear someone else say it, go, oh yeah, I have to remember to do that at the end of the meeting. Wanted to just give you some opportunities, and I will put this in a follow-up email to all of you as well, but I have some upcoming opportunities. I'm teaching a class called AI plus visuals equals meeting design on March 14th through the 17th. This will be the 3rd time that I've offered it. So I'm really excited that the Center for Appreciative Inquiry is hosting that. I'll put these links in the chat as well. I have a roadmap for tech hosting if you're interested in continuing on this journey. And I have an appreciative inquiry template. So if you're wondering about what kind of questions to ask your client as you go through the discovery meeting, what kind of questions you can ask as a facilitator to help move along the process, I use appreciative inquiry. It's the core of everything I do, whether it's tech hosting and any kind of instruction or doing my facilitation. And then if you'd like to join us, we have a March Sandbox session that's coming up. It's March 9th, so actually 1 month from today. And of course, you're all welcome to join Tech Host Academy if you haven't already done so. And just want to invite you all to let's stay in touch. And if you want to put your own contact information, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, or whatever, or your website, if you want to put that in the chat, then we can stay connected in this way as well. I loved that. The other day I was in a meeting and everybody put their LinkedIn chat and it was like, oh, wow, I have 5 new friends. So that was really great. So I hope this was helpful. Any last minute, I got to ask a question before we close off. Maybe you're full. This was the start of your day. I think it definitely inspired me. And if this is the end of your day, maybe this won't keep you up too late at night thinking about these things, but hopefully feel rest assured you've got other folks in the same boat with you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to jump off.
All right.
Lovely
Thank you,
to see you all.
everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
rest of your day and evening. Bye.
Bye.